Can you explain to the jury why you believe that?
Yes. So when you look at the image, the back of the, you mind if I pick up the actual?
Go ahead.
Okay.
But you're gonna have to stand so the jury can see it.
So when you look at the back of the slide, there's serrations at the back of the slide here. I should turn this way. So there's serrations at the back of the slide in the same location that they are in the picture. The shape of the trigger guard of the picture appeared to be the same shape, as well as the magazine. The SIG magazine is unique in that it has this lip at the front. And when inserted in the firearm, it creates this secondary kind of, it's not flush with the firearm, right? There's
Your
this
Honor, I'm
lip.
sorry. Can we
Yep.
can you turn to so we can see?
Move my chair back. Yep, there we go.
Sorry, I can't see what you're.
Yep, no problem. So there's a lip in the front of the firearm here when the magazine's inserted. And when I looked at the picture, it appeared to be that was what was drawn at the bottom, where you see that lip.
Did you see anything else about the drawing that was notable?
Yes, the ammunition appeared to be, after working this case and reviewing the image and knowing the caliber of firearms in the Crumbley home, it appeared that ammunition was not .22 ammunition for the simple fact that the cylinder at the bottom on a .22 long rifle round of ammunition is not flush. It creates almost like a cylinder at the bottom, if you can picture it, and it wouldn't be flush with the round. So instead of it just being a circle like this, where you'd have a circle like that, it would be that there are parts and edge sticking out around it, so to speak. There would be an edge drawn further around the bottom of that round of ammunition, and it's much thinner.
Okay, and I'm going to approach and show you the previously admitted picture of the other firearm that the Crumbleys owned. That's most similar to what's not here that's on the SIG that makes you think that the drawing was of the SIG. How are these two different?
So additionally, on the SIG,
and tell me how I should hold this so it doesn't look like I'm pointing at you.
Take that from you.
Okay, thank you.
So when you look at this SIG here, there's an ejection port on this side, on the right side of the firearm, similar to the one drawn in the picture. The only other magazine-fed pistol in their residence at the time did not have an ejection port on either side of the firearm because it's concealed by the slide.
Nothing further at the moment, Your Honor.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
As you know, I think you've been in court, sitting back here, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I'm Shannon. I represent Ms. Crumbley. If I ask you any questions confusing, please let me know, please.
Understood.
Thank you. Special Agent Brandon, would that be the correct way?
Yes.
Okay, to address you. Thank you. You were testifying that you are familiar with the state and federal laws regarding guns, correct?
No, that's not correct. I stated that I was familiar with the federal laws to purchase a firearm, and in some of those investigations in purchasing firearms, some of the state laws come into play.
Okay. In terms of, and if you don't know the answer, please let me know. If you do know the answer, let us know, and please answer the question. Back on November 30th of 2021, it was not illegal, and it still is not illegal, for a minor to touch a gun, correct?
It is not against federal law for a minor to touch a firearm in certain instances, no.
Okay. It is not against the law for a minor to shoot a gun at a gun range. It wasn't then, and it's not illegal now, correct?
It is not against federal law for a minor to go to a gun range to shoot a firearm, no.
Okay, and as far as you know, it's not against state law either, correct?
Yeah, as far as I know, especially from this investigation, I know that it's not against state law, yes.
Okay. On November 30th of 2021, there also is no law, federal law, that requires certain storage requirements for guns, correct?
Inside of your residence?
Yes.
There's not a federal law that forces anyone to store their firearms in a certain way, no.
And as far as you know, on November 30th of 2021, there also is not a state law that states how a firearm must be stored, correct?
It's my understanding, based on this investigation, that at the time there was not a law governing how to store a firearm in a home, no.
Okay. Now, you testified and talked to this jury about how there are various ways guns can be stored safely, correct?
Yes.
And one of the possible ways is in a gun safe, correct?
Yes.
And the Kel-Tec and Derringer gun, they were in a gun safe in the Crumbley home.
That's correct.
Another way that another way of making a gun safe is with a cable lock, correct?
Yes.
And a cable lock is it almost looks like a bike lock that loops through the gun to make it impossible to shoot when it's locked, correct?
Yes.
And in order to disable or take the cable lock off, you have to have a key, correct?
I would say that's one of the ways to take it off, yes.
Okay, so that would be the way that most people would take it off, is by using a key that works with that lock, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I want to go to exhibit 38, which I'm going to put up on my screen, but I need to switch it over. And I apologize. Mr. Godwin, can you help me, please?
Oh, yes.
I just am not sure I've shifted over. Okay, so I'm going to exhibit 38. It's this thing. Okay, I've got it plugged in. I did better than I thought I would. Okay, so this is exhibit 38. This has been admitted. This was admitted through the people when you testified before. This is the trigger lock statement. You recall testifying about this, correct?
Yes.
And when a sale of a gun is made, this form is filled out and given to the person filled out by the person buying the gun, correct?
Correct.
And it's signed, and this form specifically is signed by James Crumbley and Cammie Back being the person who sold the gun, correct?
Yes.
And this form is to help ensure that there is safety in this process of guns being sold, correct?
I'm not sure what the congressional intent is on this, and that's not something I can testify about.
Okay, thank you. You would agree with me that the sale must include a trigger lock or a gun case or a storage container that can be secured, correct?
No, it says a trigger lock or other device design, which in this instance would be the cable lock or a gun case or storage container.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So it could be a trigger lock, it could be a cable lock, it could be a gun case, it could be a storage container. There's options.
Yes.
And when you testified about the 3 guns that we've seen in this courtroom, you testified about the Derringer, the Kel-Tec, and the Sig Sauer, correct?
Yes.
And you were testifying that the caliber on those guns, that the Sig Sauer has the biggest caliber, correct?
Yes, it's a larger gun.
Out of the 3 of those.
Yes.
Okay. And by nature, with those 3 guns in mind, that means the Sig Sauer can do more damage than the other two guns, the Kel-Tec or the Derringer, correct?
I believe what I said is that it just makes a bigger hole, but yes, what you're saying is, yeah, that it would cause more damage, yes.
Okay, and a 9mm is not the, this is gonna sound like a terrible question, but is not the largest millimeter there are guns that are bigger and stronger, correct?
Yes.
What other guns could create even more damage or even larger holes?
I mean, there's a lot of calibers that are larger than 9. I don't know that you want me to list them all right now, but there are more calibers that do cause more damage, that do fire a bigger round than a 9mm.
A 357?
Yes.
A 45?
Yes.
A 50?
50 caliber?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, approximately how many other kinds of, would you guess? How many other?
I'm not going to guess. I mean, there's a lot of calibers of firearm. There are several that are larger caliber than a 9mm.
When you say
there's not many that are larger than a 9 as a semi-automatic handgun. There's a few, I would say, not a ton.
Okay, so a 9mm is not the most destructive gun you can buy, but it's a gun that a person can buy.
A 9mm is a gun a person can buy, yes.
Okay. You testified about I'm going to go to Exhibit 37. You testified about this ATF pamphlet, Youth Handgun Safety Act Notice, correct?
Yes.
You would agree with me that everyone knows guns are dangerous, correct?
I would hope so, yes.
It does not take getting a pamphlet to know that a gun is a weapon. That's common knowledge, correct?
Yes.
Whether that pamphlet is in the box, on the counter, on the floor, in the car, it's common knowledge that a gun is a serious, dangerous weapon, correct?
Yes, but that's not the purpose of this pamphlet.
Well, the purpose of this pamphlet is to make sure youths with handgun is especially dangerous, correct?
Yes.
And that also is fairly common sense, correct?
I don't know how to answer that question, being that it's like the #1 cause of death for children, that firearms are the #1 cause of death for kids. So I don't know how to answer that question.
Well, my point is, we know guns are dangerous. We know they're dangerous when youths handle guns. It doesn't change whether it's a youth or an adult, correct?
I think that if they wanted to have a pamphlet that said the Person Safety Act notice, they would have. It says youth for a reason. I think that there's a special category for that.
But any person would know that a youth handling a gun, it would be dangerous.
I would hope so.
Okay. We saw a lot of exhibits showing that there were trips to the gun range, and we can agree that there is no doubt James Crumbley and Ethan Crumbley like guns or are interested in guns, correct?
It appears so from the evidence, yes.
You showed this jury evidence of them purchasing, of James Crumbley purchasing the 3 weapons, correct?
Yes.
We've shown this jury text messages between Mr. Crumbley and Mrs. Crumbley showing that they're going to, that Mr. Crumbley and Ethan Crumbley, the shooter, are going to gun ranges, correct?
I'm sorry, repeat it. I got a little distracted.
I am so sorry.
That's okay.
I'm like in a choke. Excuse me, I'm so sorry.
You want a cough drop?
I need like just something. I feel like I just had a bug fly in my throat.
I haven't seen any bugs in here. You want a cough drop?
Yeah, can I have one? Thanks. Sorry, excuse me. I'm so sorry. Okay, we can agree James Crumbley and his son are interested in guns.
Yes.
We can agree they would go to the gun range, they would go shooting together.
Yes.
Okay, you have some evidence of some various trips they took to the gun range, but it's possible there's many, many more trips that Mr. Crumbley and his son took to the gun range, correct?
That's possible, yes.
What you're testifying to this jury is not limited to the only experiences we can say the shooter has ever had at a gun range.
That's fair, yes.
And there is one occasion back in the summer of 2021 when Jennifer Crumbley is with her husband and son at the gun range, and we see her shooting in the video, correct?
Yes.
And aside from that, the only other time we see Jennifer Crumbley at the gun range is on the day after the Sig Sauer was purchased, when she's with this half-an-hour-long video we watched with the shooter, correct?
Yes.
And as we watched that video, on that occasion, we can agree James Crumbley is not there with them, correct?
Yes.
And when Jennifer Crumbley walks in, she's carrying the case that has the gun in it, correct?
Yes.
She goes up to the counter, purchases ammunition, and she carries it over to the area where they shoot. Is that fair to say?
Yes, she purchased the ammunition. I'm not clear on who picked out how much ammunition. There was a time that the shooter made a 2 with his finger, and I can't be certain if he was talking about the ammunition boxes or the targets.
Okay, so they end up in the area where you shoot, and it appears to me, although I've never been to a range, you put the gun in the spot where the person stands to actually shoot it, correct?
Yes.
And then it appears to me, but please tell me if I'm wrong, that you load the magazines with the ammunition on the counter behind, when the gun is sitting away from you, correct?
Yes, that's generally been my experience at private ranges, yes.
And in these videos that we saw, it's apparent that the shooter has knowledge of how to load those magazines with the ammunition, correct?
Yes.
He is the one loading those magazines with the ammunition, not Mrs. Crumbley.
No, there was a point at one time when Mrs. Crumbley was putting rounds and her arm was moving. Obviously the angle's sideways so you can't see, but there was a time when she was loading. I don't think she loaded all the magazines, but I think she did load a few rounds.
Okay. And when we see the video of the shooter shooting the weapon, he obviously knows how to shoot the weapon and is shooting the weapon at the target, correct?
Yes.
And when Mrs. Crumbley comes up and takes her turn, Mom's having her turn with the weapon, there's some very obvious conversation going on between herself and the shooter, back and forth between the two of them, correct?
Yes.
And it appears from the video, I believe that you said the shooter is explaining something to her.
Yes, I think he was explaining how to send the slide forward to chamber a round. She was having trouble, she got the magazine in, but then couldn't get the slide to go forward.
Okay, and that was in the first, she took 2 turns essentially at the range, correct?
Yes.
And in the first turn she took, that's when she's having trouble with the slide?
Yes.
Is that, okay. And when we see Mrs. Crumbley take her second turn, we see her turn back and have to call the shooter over to explain something else to her in trying to figure out how to hold the gun, correct?
Yeah, it seemed like he was trying to explain how to properly grip the firearm, yes.
Okay. And we can agree that in the videos from this shooting range at Accurate with Mrs. Crumbley and other ranges, it's clear the shooter has been given experience shooting at ranges and knows how to operate these weapons, correct?
Yes.
You also showed this jury evidence that on one other occasion, Mr. Crumbley and the shooter rented a 9mm gun.
Yes.
And on that day, obviously, the shooter shot the 9mm gun, correct?
I don't recall from the video that we have of that if he shot it or not. I believe, I would assume he did, but I can't say for certain.
It would be weird if you rented a gun and didn't shoot it.
I agree.
Okay. And you don't know if there's other trips that Mr. Crumbley took with the shooter where they may have rented 9mm guns on other occasions, correct?
If it was to this specific range, I would know about it based on the receipts, but if not, then no. If it was a different range, then it's possible, yes.
The range that you checked with was the one in Clarkston, correct?
Yes.
There are a number of gun ranges, though, in the area, and it's fair to say you did not check with all of those ranges.
Not all of them. The ones in close proximity to the house, yes. But at the time, it was winter, so a lot of the outdoor ranges, it had snowed the weekend before. A lot of the outdoor ranges either were snowed, there was too much snow, but yes, as far as the indoor ranges in the area, that's the closest.
Okay. In addition to these guns and going to this indoor range, you were at the Crumbley home during the time the search warrant was executed, correct?
Yes.
And if you do not know the answer to this, you can let us know. During the search warrant that was executed, you observed that the shooter had a number of BB guns, correct?
Yes.
And BB guns are not on the same level of danger as these three weapons, these three guns you've testified about, correct?
I mean, they can be dangerous, but are they a firearm? No.
Okay. So, and you also, I'm sure, observed that in the backyard at the Crumbley's home, they had targets set up where BB guns could be shot in the backyard, correct?
Yes.
So it's a very fair assumption to say that the shooter was interested in BB guns, target practice, these guns going to the shooting range.
Yes.
When you testified that the Keltec was in a gun safe at the time law enforcement did the search warrant, correct?
Yes.
And the Derringer.
Yes.
And there was a cable lock that was not on the Keltec gun, correct?
There was a cable lock in the Keltec gun box in the kitchen that was not on the Keltec gun. There were no cable locks on either the Derringer or the Keltec inside the safe.
And we talked about the different options of ways to keep a gun safe. And while the cable lock was not on the Keltec or the Derringer, there wasn't a cable lock on that one, those two were secured in a gun safe.
Yes, with the combination of 000, but yes.
Okay, and when you testified about the combination being 000, that was the combination that you said that manufacturer, that would be the default.
Yes.
And that combination can be changed by people when they get the gun, correct?
When they get the safe, yes, they can change the combination.
And you have no knowledge of what the combination was at the time that James and Jennifer Crumbley had that safe in the home. All you know is the time you saw the safe, the combination was 000, correct?
I know that the safe was unlocked at the house by law enforcement using the code 000.
Did you unlock the safe at the house, or is that, you were not the person that unlocked that safe though, correct?
No. You asked me the question. I said I know it was unlocked with that, but I was not present when it was unlocked, but I know that that's the combination to the safe, and it has not been changed since.
Okay. You did not watch law enforcement open the safe.
No.
You did not watch law enforcement turn the numbers on the safe.
No.
You believe that the numbers law enforcement used were 000, but you do not have personal knowledge that 000 opened that safe, correct?
I did not physically observe it, no.
And it's fair to say that those guns, that Keltec and that Derringer, were purchased in June of 2021, correct?
Yes.
And there is no claim in this case that the shooter ever took those two guns or took them out of the house or took those to school, anything along those lines, correct?
Not out of the house, no.
In terms of, Your Honor, are we gonna go till 5 or what's the
Well,
word?
I have special permission,
Okay,
but
so,
I would like to, can we finish this witness? Can we finish this witness today?
Your Honor, there were so many exhibits. I don't think we can. And,
Okay, we can go till 5, right? You guys okay going till 5?
okay.
Yeah.
You testified, okay, so let's go to some of the exhibits if we can. I'm gonna go to exhibit 52. Was this, it appears to be conversation by messages back and forth. And it shows the shooter holding the Kel-Tec, correct?
This one shows him loading the Kel-Tec, that video that you had on now, yes.
I'm sorry, it shows him loading the Kel-Tec. And this video was from back in August of 2021, correct?
Yes.
And you testified that obviously this video shows the shooter holding the Kel-Tec. And let's see here, the video was admitted also. Let me just get to the video. Okay, so this is the video. I'm just gonna play it, it's 12 seconds.
This is exhibit.
This is exhibit 51. Okay, so this video shows the shooter loading the Kel-Tec.
This one was an empty slide. You just sent the slide forward on this video, yes.
Okay, I am
I'm
so
just-
bad with these guns. Yeah, please correct me. So this one is him doing what, sending the slide forward?
Yes, there was no ammunition in the firearm, I don't believe there was even a magazine inserted. He just sent the slide forward in this video. It was like a black leather, it was like a couch or something like that below it.
Okay, and in this video, you have no idea if there are other people around him.
No.
The video is focused on the gun in the shooter's hand, correct?
Yes,
And this video was sent by text message over to a friend of the shooter's. Is that correct?
yes.
And while we don't see any people in this video, we don't know if Mr. or Mrs. Crumbley were present at the time the shooter is taking this video.
We know that they were in the home at the time, but we don't know exactly where they were in the home, no.
Okay, so we know they're at home at the time the shooter's in the home making this video and sending it to a friend, correct?
Yes,
And as much as, this video, him doing this, the shooter doing this, is not illegal, correct?
no.
It's not,
It's not illegal, I can't say,
I'm not gonna say it's a good idea.
right, I mean, under federal law, it wouldn't be illegal. You're in your own home and, I don't know where his parents are at the time either though, so I can't really comment whether it was legal or not on what he's doing with the firearm.
Okay, right, we don't know. All we have is this little 12-second video with no context, correct?
I think the context was the text message that says, my dad left his gun out, so it seems odd to send a text message if your dad was around while you filmed it.
Okay.
Or your parents, I should say.
We know dad is in the home at the time this video is made, correct?
Yes, both Jennifer and James, yes.
We know mom is in the home at the time this video is made, correct?
Yes.
This home we're talking about,
Can you
there will be
excuse me?
other.
Can you excuse me for 1 second?
Sure.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, so we're at the time where we're talking about this video that was sent. Your testimony was that the shooter sent a text that said, my dad left this out. Or I'm sorry, yeah, my dad left it out, correct?
Yes,
It does not say my mom left it out.
it does not.
It specifically says my dad.
Yes,
And at the end of the day, you don't know the shooter.
I don't know the shooter personally.
Right.
No,
You don't know the shooter's friend.
no,
You don't know other things the shooter and his friend had been talking about that day, correct?
I've reviewed messages between the shooter and his friend for several days, but I don't understand what you're asking there.
I'm asking, you don't know whether when that statement was sent to his friend, you don't know that that's true, that his dad left the gun out, correct? All you can do is read the text.
I know he sent the text, yes.
He sent the text, but you don't know that that's true, correct? That's true, correct?
I can say I know he sent the text. I don't know. I don't know exactly where. Yeah, I don't know how to answer that question. I don't know if it's true or not. I don't know if anyone knows it's true or not. But he sent the text.
You are aware that teenagers can embellish things.
I don't have any teenagers.
You were a teenager at some point.
Sure. I don't know that I'm specialized in teenager behavior to
Okay.
testify to that.
You would agree with me it's possible for teenagers to embellish to impress their friends?
I would agree, yeah, that it's possible for teenagers to embellish. I think is a fair statement.
It's possible for them to send messages to friends to try to look cool.
It's possible, yes.
It's possible to try to fit in with other people and get people's attention, correct?
I think we're getting into an area that I'm not authorized to testify about as a federal agent right now, honestly. And
Yeah, Your Honor, Special Agent Brandon has very defined parameters about what he can testify to. He is Assistant United States Attorney in the courtroom because he can only testify to certain things. So I would just ask that.
I guess I'm not sure what that means, but
It means he can't testify about teenage behavior. He can't testify about.
well, some of that is also argumentative, right? I guess I take judicial notice that teenagers embellish things, just from my own, right? Yeah, it's from they talked about that during jury selection, so he doesn't know. I don't think he was a teenager not long ago himself, I think. So police officers are looking younger and younger to me.
Okay, so the bottom line is, in terms of what's going on in this shooter's mind, and at this time, the Crumbley son's mind, we just don't know. We're not mind readers, correct?
yes,
We do know, though, it's not just based on text messages that James and Jennifer Crumbley were in the home at the time this video was made, correct?
yes, that's correct.
That is something that you established through actual evidence, and we know they were present in the home.
Yes,
And when we're talking about the Crumbley's home, it's a 900 square foot home, correct?
yes,
It's a small ranch with 3 bedrooms.
yes,
We're not talking a 4,000 square foot, 3-story house, correct?
that's correct.
So we know that all 3 people at the time this video was made were in this 900 square foot home.
Yes,
Same thing with the video that was you testified about a video where you can see the dining room table and you recognize the wood grain as being from their dining room, correct?
yes,
Can you remind me what was happening in that video? I don't want to waste the jury's
Sure,
time,
yeah.
but I think you.
Yeah, so in the video, the shooter loads a loaded pistol magazine into the Keltec and then sends the slide forward, chambering around, which means the firearm is ready to be discharged at that time.
And when that video was taken, that's also a short little video clip, correct?
Yes.
And that video clip also, we do not know who else is present when that video clip was taken.
Not in the immediate vicinity around him, no. We know that both Jennifer and James were in the residence, so yes.
Okay, so James and Jennifer are in the residence when Ethan Crumbley is making this video.
Yes.
Okay, and we know he made that video, and obviously had it on his phone.
Correct.
And we know he sent that video to a friend.
Yes.
And again, we don't really have much more context beyond that, correct?
Other than the text message, no.
Well, the text message was from the other.
I think the text message, the videos were sent, and then the text message followed the videos.
I'm sorry, were both of those videos sent at the time when it said my dad left it out?
I think the first video was sent at 9:30, and the second video was sent at like 12:30 a.m., so 4 hours later. But in that chain of text, it's video 9:30, video 12:30, and then the text that said my dad left his gun out, LOL.
Okay.
Something to that effect.
And you checked to make sure that at 9:30 and at 12:30, both parents were at home, correct?
Yes.
And and so he sends these two videos, and there's no response from his friend, correct?
I don't recall if there was a response or not. I know that they were sent. There may have been an exchange, but I just know that they were sent to his friend.
Okay, and then he sends another text saying, my dad left this out, correct?
Yes.
Now we can agree in the text message, or I'm sorry, in the Instagram post, there's reference that this gun was a gift to the shooter, correct?
Yes.
You are not a member of the Crumbley family, correct?
No.
You don't know what the terms of that gift are in terms of whether the shooter was allowed to just possess it and have it at all times, or if there were conditions around and rules around that gift, correct?
No, I just know that it was a gift.
Okay. And you don't know if you do not know where that gun was kept, the Sig Sauer was kept, prior to the day you're in the house with law enforcement and the open gun case was on the bed, correct? I'm sorry, it's late in the day, so
Sure.
my questions are getting terrible. Let me back up. When you saw the weapon, the actual weapon, the Sig Sauer, you saw it at the school, correct?
Yes.
And when you went to the parents' home, the gun case was out on the bed, correct?
I believe when I got there, it had been moved to the kitchen at that point.
I'm sorry, it was
Yes.
in the kitchen
Sure,
at
yeah.
that point?
Yes.
Okay, and prior to you getting there, you don't know where the gun case had been, where it was moved to, who had moved it, and things like that, correct?
I know based on reviewing the search warrant photographs from the scene that are done prior to searching a residence, that it was on the bed and with the empty box of pistol ammunition next to it when those photographs were taken. That's what I know.
You don't know prior to that day or the night before where that gun was stored in the Crumbley's home, correct?
I don't know myself. I don't have knowledge of that. I know that there's been. I don't know how to answer that question, honestly.
Okay, well, you don't know the answer to that.
As someone that's been involved in this investigation, as one of the officers in charge, I have reviewed multiple different statements and texts about where it was stored. So I don't know how to quite answer that question because there were various texts and statements about where it was stored from, and the defendant's messages and statements and things like that. So I don't know how to answer that question But do I know for certain where it was stored? The answer to that is no.
Okay. You also don't know whether when the Sig Sauer was in the Crumbley home, if they had the cable lock on the Sig Sauer gun.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
When the gun was in the Crumbley's home, in the days following James buying the gun, you don't know if the cable lock was on that gun.
I don't know, other than the 26th, the date that they purchased the firearm. I believe they took photos of it around 1:00 p.m. I know that the shooter took a video around shortly after 6:00 p.m. with the firearm, with the cable lock still in the bag, not inserted in the gun. So I know that at least when they got home from the firearm store after the purchase, there were photographs taken. There was no cable lock inserted. I know later that night at 6 p.m., so shortly thereafter, between 6 and 6:40, both the shooter and Mrs. Crumbley took photographs on their phone or photos and videos, and the cable lock wasn't inserted. It was still in the bag. That's all I know. I know that at those specific times when those pictures are taken, that the cable lock was not used at those times.
Okay, we can agree on that. Beyond that photograph, the day the gun was purchased, past 6 o'clock that night, you don't know if the cable lock was put on that gun, correct?
I have no evidence whether it was or was not, no.
You also don't know, after 6 o'clock that night, where the gun was placed, correct?
For that specific day, I don't personally know where that gun was that night, no.
You also don't know who was responsible for putting that gun away that night, correct?
I don't know how to answer that question. I guess it's if Mrs. Crumbley is taking a picture of the firearm and she's the only one home, it would be her responsibility to put the firearm away. And if it's Mr. Crumbley, so I don't know how to answer your question. So if you want me to answer that, I don't know their conversations about who's responsible for locking it up at night.
Right, so your answer
yes.
is I don't know. You don't know.
Right.
Okay. And so on the 26th, that night, after 6 p.m., after the photo's taken, we can agree, you don't know if the cable lock got put on, you don't know where the gun was stored, and you don't know who was responsible for storing it, correct?
I don't know how to answer your question because I feel like that
Because you don't know.
Yeah,
I
I believe it's asked and answered.
I don't know whose responsibility. It could be both parents' responsibility. I don't know how to answer that question.
You weren't there.
Correct, I wasn't there. I don't know who's.
Okay.
But Your Honor, I just want to make record, he does have knowledge of all the other evidence, so I think the struggle here is he
knows what was happening at 6 p.m. but
no, he's reviewed different statements about
so
that's where the struggle is here. He doesn't personally know if those statements are true, but I think that's why I don't want to put words in his mouth, but
he has other information. So
I'm asking him about his personal knowledge though. I'm not asking him about things other people said, things. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so then we go to the 27th. This is the day after the gun was purchased by Mr. Crumbley, correct?
Yes.
Okay, we've obviously talked about Mrs. Crumbley being at the range with the shooter that day, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that night, when after Mrs. Crumbley was home, you do know that Mrs. Crumbley and her son went back home, correct?
Yes.
Okay, you don't have personal knowledge of who took the gun from the car they drove into the home, correct?
That's correct.
You don't know if the gun was even brought into the home when Mrs. Crumbley and the shooter arrived back home after the gun range.
That's correct.
You don't know if after coming home from the gun range, the cable lock was put on the gun.
By who? I don't know that the cable lock was placed on the firearm, but if you're saying it appeared the way that Mrs. Crumbley operated the firearm, it would be very difficult for her to lock the slide to the rear to put the cable lock on.
She appears like she doesn't know what she's doing with the gun, right?
Yes.
Okay. There's no doubt the shooter has a lot more knowledge about this gun than Mrs. Crumbley does.
Yes, that's fair.
Okay. And when Mrs. Crumbley is posting, she's posting that it's her first time shooting a 9mm, correct?
Yes, that's what she wrote.
And she's calling it a Mother-Son Day, correct?
Yes,
And you don't know much about this family, but Mother-Son Day implies this is a mother and son spending time together, correct?
that's what the text said, yes.
It's obvious Mrs. Crumbley's doing something with her son he enjoys, correct?
Yes, he was definitely smiling when he was shooting the firearm, yes.
Okay? And then both Mrs. Crumbley and her son are, comparing targets and talking and interacting with one another, correct?
That's what occurred on the surveillance video, yes.
And once they got home that night, you have no idea if the cable lock was put on the gun.
I do not know. No.
You don't even know if the gun was brought in the house.
No.
You don't know where the gun was kept that night.
No.
And you don't know where the gun was kept in the following day or day after. You don't have personal knowledge of that, correct?
Yes.
And at the end of the day, I'm sorry, scratch that. In terms of the shooter, you have no awareness of whether the shooter has ever had any kind of safety course.
I found no evidence that he had a safety course, no.
You don't, so there is no evidence that you can say, there's no evidence, but that doesn't mean that didn't happen, correct?
Correct.
And you have no evidence about James, whether or not he's ever had a safety course, correct?
I found no evidence of that, no. But I don't, yeah, correct.
So you wouldn't know either way.
It's possible he had a safety course. I personally found no evidence of that.
And when you're talking about this drawing, and I'd like to just put the math paper back up. And I apologize, I believe it was exhibit.
It's 75. No, it's 74.
Thank you. Okay, so your testimony was, by looking at this math paper, you believe the gun in exhibit 75 looks like the Sig Sauer weapon, correct?
Yes.
And this math paper was drawn after the shooter had already picked out and had his dad purchase the Sig Sauer, and the family already owned that gun, correct?
Yes.
And that bullet, you believe, looks like a bullet that would be unique to the Sig Sauer gun.
No, that's not what I said. I just said out of the firearms they own in their home, out of the two calibers, it resembles more of a 9mm than a 22.
Okay, but it's just a bullet, right? We can agree.
You listed off a lot of calibers earlier. If you ever look at all those rounds, they look vastly different.
All right, so that's a 9mm caliber?
I'm saying it resembles, or could resemble a 9mm caliber. It is definitely a round of pistol ammunition that does not look like a 22.
Okay, these are just drawings that we know the shooter drew at school, correct?
They are drawings that the shooter drew at school, yes. I don't know if I would say just.
They're drawings we know he drew at the school.
Yes.
And you have never discussed these drawings with the shooter, correct?
No.
You were not present when the shooter met with the school counselor about this drawing, correct?
No, I was not.
You were not present when the school shooter met with the principal from the school and talked about this drawing, correct?
I was not present.
You were not present when Mrs. Crumbley and her husband met with the shooter at the school about this drawing.
Correct. I did not get to the school that day until after the shooting occurred.
You did not hear the shooter explain why he put these things on this drawing, correct?
Yes, I did not respond until after the shooting occurred.
Okay. So you've never had a conversation with him where he explained or talked about what he was doing in this drawing, and you've never seen a video of those conversations, correct?
As I believe I said before, I haven't met the shooter before.
Yeah, I have just a moment, Your Honor.
Sure.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Can you do redirect before we leave?
I can. Special Agent Brandon, you were asked some questions about the 9mm and that it isn't the most powerful gun. That there are other guns that could do more damage. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Would you acknowledge, though, that it's much more difficult to control and fire it quickly and accurately than a .22?
Yes, if we're going by the calibers, yeah, 50 caliber would be a lot more difficult to carry around than a 9mm.
Okay. And you were asked a lot about whether or not James or Jennifer, how many times they went to the shooting range, or if Jennifer ever went took them at a different time. You don't really know, though, correct?
No, all I know is the evidence that I found and that was presented today and that I testified to.
Okay, well, let's talk about that for a minute. What have you reviewed? Just summarize what you've reviewed.
So I've reviewed surveillance camera video from both the school, the firearms range, Facebook returns for James and Jennifer Crumbley, Instagram returns, the forensic download of 7 cell phones, I believe, belonging to James, Jennifer, and the shooter. The entire case file, other interviews, and things like that. Basically everything related to this case.
Okay, and when you say you reviewed the phones, that means all the content that was on the phone, correct?
Yes.
Going back to quite a long time.
Yes.
In fact, some of the cell phone data went back several years.
Yes.
Okay, and on those phones, you also reviewed every video taken by Jennifer Crumbley.
Yes.
Correct? Every picture, correct?
Yes.
All of the Facebook messages from the return that she hadn't deleted, you reviewed those, correct?
Yes.
All of the communications between the two, Jennifer and James, correct?
Yes.
Videos that were recorded by her of herself, correct?
Yes.
Videos of the two of them fighting, correct?
Your Honor,
No, Your Honor, let me finish.
This is all
Whoa.
leading questions.
Okay. The question
Sustain.
was,
Sustain.
you don't know too much about this family, do you? Is that true?
In the context of this investigation, I've learned a lot about the Crumbley family. Based on the way the question was asked, I thought it was more in the lines of, in the same way of asking if I knew the shooter, do I know the Crumbleys? I don't personally know them, but in this investigation, yes, I've had a very detailed look at their life over the last several years, especially the year leading up to the shooting, yes.
Okay. And you were asked about the second video the shooter took of the Caltech.
Yes.
Okay. And you were asked if you knew whether or not someone was a parent, Jennifer Crumbley or James Crumbley was next to him, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Let's just say for a moment, they were. Do you still have any problem with that video?
Objection. His opinion about having a problem with it is irrelevant.
Yeah.
Do you have concerns about safety when you look at that video, regardless of who was next to him?
Yes, based on the height of the table, the direction the firearm was pointed would either have been based on the way the wood grain goes, it would have either been at the neighbor's house or out the front window of the house. And because the height of the table, potentially, and with the porch, I'm not quite sure if it would be head height or stomach or above, but it would definitely be pointed in a direction where if the firearm was shot, it could travel outside the home.
Okay. You were asked about whose responsibility it was, or did you know, to lock up the weapon, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Whose responsibility is it when a firearm, a 9mm, is in your home? Whose responsibility is when you know there's a minor there?
Based on my understanding of the pamphlet that was handed out, I can say that it would not be on the juvenile.
All right. You were asked about that meeting in the counselor's office, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the worksheet that you viewed,
Yes.
correct? Okay. And you were asked if you don't know what the counselor said about it, correct? And your answer was no, you don't.
Correct. I said I wasn't personally there for what he said about it.
Okay, but you know that the worksheet was shown to Jennifer Crumbley, correct?
Yes.
And you know that the worksheet had the words "help me," correct?
Yes.
Okay, and the worksheet had the words "blood everywhere," correct?
Yes, it did.
Okay, and you know that that worksheet
Your
was
Honor,
both texted.
Objection to leading. This is all leading.
Do you know whether or not Jennifer Crumbley saw that worksheet?
Yes.
All right, and how do you know that?
It was on her cell phone, and she sent it to several people after she received it.
Okay, and do you know that if the worksheet that she was shown had the words "help me," "blood everywhere"?
It did.
Okay, thank you.
You can step down to your excuse. All right. Okay. So I know it's been a long day, but I'm intent on using the time as well as possible. I think we've made some good headway today. I'm going to ask you to return at 8:30 in the morning. Do you guys have any questions about the schedule? Did you fill out your lunch? Was lunch good? I made it myself. I'm going to have you return at 8:30 in the morning. Any questions about the schedule? I'm supposed to tell you during the trial, do not read, listen to, or watch any news reports about the case. Under the law, the evidence you consider to decide the case must meet certain standards. For example, witnesses must swear to tell the truth. The lawyers must be able to cross-examine them. News reports do not have to meet these standards. They can give you incorrect or misleading information. So to be fair to both sides, you must follow this instruction. Do not go on social media. Don't post. Don't do research. Don't watch the news. And please do not discuss the case with anyone. If anyone attempts to discuss the case with you, please let me know. All right? All right, we appreciate you. Any questions about the schedule? I think we're moving along, okay?